Good evening, I'm Dennis Ward. Welcome to APTN National News Weekend. The Saskatoon City Police have started their search of the Saskatoon landfill for a young Métis woman. Mackenzie Trottier went missing in 2020, but police say they recently found evidence from devices that led them to a specific area of the landfill. Our reporter Rachel May was at the search.
Mackenzie, we love you and we miss you deeply.
Mackenzie Trottier was 22 when she was last seen in Saskatoon on December 21st, 2020. After 3.5 years, the search has now moved to the city landfill. Saskatoon's garbage trucks are equipped with GPS tracking, and the landfill is divided by neighborhoods. This has allowed police to pinpoint a 930 square meter search area. Mackenzie's father, Paul Trottier, said today is a difficult but important part of the journey.
The enormous amount of work that's going on behind us is staggering. I know that for my family, this is the last place anybody wants to be. So emotionally, it's difficult.
Over the next 33 days, Saskatoon City Police, Calgary Police Services, and specially trained dogs will be searching for evidence regarding Mackenzie's case. Saskatoon Police Major Crime Staff Sergeant Corey Lenius said working with the RCMP and Calgary Police has given them access to tools otherwise unavailable to them.
So the canine units from Calgary and the RCMP, they're specifically trained dogs, purpose dogs. There's only a handful in the country, and they were available for us to use during this period.
When asked what the dogs were trained in, Lenius said they are human recovery cadaver dogs. At this time, the search is still considered a missing person investigation. Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
The man who killed a Kaska woman from the Yukon community of Ross River in 2019 has been sentenced to a prison term. Our Whitehorse reporter Sarah Connors was at the hearing.
The Supreme Court of Yukon has sentenced Philip Atkinson with a 9.5-year sentence in the 2019 death of Kaska woman Mary Ann Oley. 59-year-old Oley was last seen the evening of July 31st, 2019 at Atkinson's home. Her lifeless body was discovered there the next day, where she was pronounced dead. While her death was originally not considered suspicious, an autopsy later showed her body had signs of injury, including anorectal trauma that caused internal bleeding. 68-year-old Atkinson, who is also Kaska, was originally charged with first-degree murder a year after Oley's death. He pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of manslaughter as part of a plea bargain. The Crown and defense chose a joint submission for sentencing, meaning they agreed on the sentence. The Crown said it had significant weaknesses in its case and that a joint submission would prevent a 5-week jury trial and save time and court resources. With time already served, Atkinson will be released from federal prison in just over 4 years. He's also subject to a DNA order and a lifetime firearms ban. A family member of Oley who was at the sentencing told reporters she didn't think justice was served and that Atkinson's sentence should be longer for the pain he's caused the community. Sarah Connors, APTN National News, Whitehorse.
An online training program has left students and instructors out in the cold for weeks. That's because the school suspended operations earlier this year, but it was done without little to no communication. And now some students and ex-staff have lost trust in the school. Here's Annette Francis with more.
Things are locked up tight at the Native Education and Training College in North Bay, Ontario. This notice, posted on the door dated February 7th, states, due to non-payment of rent arrears, the landlord has terminated the lease and hereby repossessed the premises. And there's been no access to online programs for students either. Amanda Weigel dreamed of getting a diploma in human resources management. So last November, when she saw the program was being offered online through the Native Education and Training College, she applied. Soon after paying $6,100 in tuition, those dreams faded.
I got a 14-day free trial with my course and the books. Once the 14 days had expired, then I didn't hear from anybody.
Weiko is a member of the Peguis First Nation in Ontario. She was never able to begin the program. Weiko was permanently locked out of the system in December and didn't hear from anyone until January 12th.
Finally, they had gotten back to me because I told them that I was going to go to the media and get myself legal advice. And as soon as they heard that, they reached out to me right away, and they said that they'd give me my full refund because it was still within the 30 days. So I filled out the paperwork for my full refund on January 12th, and after 30 days, I still have not received anything.
Skylar Sayers is from the Mississauga First Nation in Ontario. He was taking the environmental technician program. Sayers has been locked out too, although his band did pay for the program.
In the end there, I did the exam on January 4th, and I I complete the test, or the exam, handed in, and there's no contact from anybody from that point until maybe two or three communications from anybody at that school between then and now.
APTN contacted the Ministry of Colleges and Universities about the situation. Its response: the Superintendent of Career Colleges is aware of the students' concerns and is speaking with the parties to facilitate a resolution. In an emailed statement from Larry Stewart, the owner of NETC, he claims someone had stolen the tuition checks from his mailbox and that their online platform was hacked and that all the instructors had quit. Ex-instructor Lorraine Neal disagrees on that last point. She had worked at the NETC since 2016. In March, Neal asked to be laid off because she wasn't getting paid.
And it was frustrating. So that's why I requested to be laid off. But I never got my ROE. They never fired me. I never officially quit. I have no idea where I stand.
Meanwhile, Weiko wants to be reimbursed. However, she's giving up on any future education endeavors.
I'm just going to leave it as it is. Unfortunately, it just kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, and I'm not going to pursue it.
According to Stewart's statement, tuition fees are now refundable, and they're working on transferring students to another online platform. In the meantime, the school and available programs continues to be advertised online. Annette Francis, APTN National News, North Bay.
You can find much more on that story over on our website, aptnnews.ca. Several First Nations leaders were in Ottawa this past week to speak up about the lack of consent about nuclear power plants and waste on their traditional lands. Angel Moore has that story.
At a press conference in Ottawa, Green Party co-leader Elizabeth May was joined by 3 First Nations leaders. They were there to reject the possible expansion of the nuclear industry in their territories. Grand Chief Ron Tremblay is from the Holistic Council in New Brunswick and is worried about the waste produced.
Our people were never consulted or asked about our input or concerns about nuclear. So we're sitting here today talking about nuclear waste and where to put it and where to place it.
Tremblay is talking about the Pointe La Pro nuclear generating station. Atlantic Canada's only nuclear plant is located 20 kilometers west of St. John, New Brunswick. It provides the province of New Brunswick with 40% of its power. The plant is located in Passamaquoddy territory. Hugh Akaji is chief of the Passamaquoddy Nation. He says nuclear power is too risky.
Every child needs to see what I saw. They need to see those fish. They need to see those trees. They need healthy air, and they do not need nuclear contamination for thousands of years.
The plant uses uranium fuel refined at plants such as the Blind River Uranium Refinery. It's in Ontario, located on the ancestral lands of the people of the Mississauga First Nation. Peyton Peguis is a councillor there and says her band has issued a band council resolution
to declare opposition to any future use of the Blind River Refinery site that would see these lands being used as a disposal site for radioactive wastes. Unfortunately, the challenges faced by our First Nation are not unique, and the environmental discrimination is happening all across the country.
Peguis says her community in Ontario is consulting with Canada Nuclear Safety Commission, but she says treaty rights are not being upheld.
There's a lot more in-depth discussions that need to be had, and we really are at a point where we need to reset the relationship and ensure that our rights are being upheld.
New Brunswick Power did not respond for an interview at time of air, and the Canada Nuclear Safety Commission said an interview was also not possible. Angel Moore, APTN National News, Jabutuk, also known as Halifax.
Peguis First Nation has declared a state of emergency and filed a $1 billion lawsuit against the federal government and province of Manitoba. That story and more coming up after the break. Welcome back. A two-day gathering of 60 Scoop survivors wrapped up in Winnipeg on Monday. It was hosted by the Anish Corporation and the Southern Chiefs Organization. And as APTN Sierra Bettens reports, survivors came from far and wide to meet each other.
Carla Devlin has spent most of her life trying to find who she is.
I didn't fit in the Western world, and I didn't fit in my own community, not knowing where I was from and who my people are. So that has been a difficult journey as far as who am I? Where do I belong?
Devlin is originally from Millbrook First Nation in Nova Scotia, but grew up in Toronto's child welfare system. She's among the hundreds of 60 Scoop survivors gathered at a conference in Winnipeg today. Hosted by the Anish Corporation and the Southern Chiefs Organization, the Finding Our Spirits gathering gives survivors from across the globe a chance to share experiences and reconnect.
It should always be survivor-led, and in anything that we do, and that's how this gathering came to be. And it turned out to be an international gathering because many of the children that were scooped during the 60 Scoop went international.
It's comforting for them to be able to hear one another's stories and to know that they're not alone in those experiences.
Ravensong Gargan and Stephanie Annika traveled from the west coast to the prairies from the 60 Scoop Indigenous Society of British Columbia. They are survivors who know that reconnecting can be incredibly arduous.
I've talked to some survivors who are just tired. You know, they're crying, they're hurt, they're stressed. They don't know where to turn, so they turn to our society.
Get our records that are not all blacked out would be really helpful, and being able to have records that were not doctored or altered would be also helpful. We're finding there's a lot of 60 Scoops that the records are not accurate.
Tanya Ross, originally from Opaskwayak Cree Nation, grew up in the foster care system in Manitoba and Alberta. She experienced hardships and trauma while in care. It led to her involvement with the criminal justice system, where she spent 20 years in prison.
I had to start rebuilding my life outside the walls of prison, and I just put one foot in front of the other. I didn't know how, but I had an amazing support circle, and I knew I wanted to give back to my community, my people, because of what I took.
Today, Ross runs a youth healing lodge and travels as a motivational speaker. A common theme she has noticed among 60 Scoop survivors is the isolation that comes with this connection.
We all have in common that when you're growing up in foster care, you know, in different foster homes and group homes and that, the loneliness of wanting to be with your family. And where's home? I had that question for so long, like, where's home? And my mom always told me, like, home is where you want to make it, my girl.
Devlin spent the past 5 years retracing her roots and a lifetime of feeling lost. She says attending the gathering feels like coming home.
It's been really an emotional journey, but almost a bit like a homecoming, that family reunion that we never had.
Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Winnipeg.
To the West Coast now, where a pilot project which allowed for the decriminalization of small amounts of hard street drugs in British Columbia is not working. That's according to the provincial government officials. APTN's Tina House has more on this story.
Illicit drugs and hard drugs should not be used where kids are playing, where patients are recovering, where community life is lived.
Right across Canada, the opioid crisis is getting worse, and in BC, the situation is becoming dire, with nearly 14,000 people having lost their lives since the epidemic was declared in 2016. In January of 2023, a 3-year pilot project to decriminalize 2.5 grams or less of hard street drugs was enacted in BC.
Instead of being treated as criminals, they will be treated with care and compassion. Decriminalizing people who use drugs is a critical step in tackling the toxic drug crisis.
However, just a year later, many would say it's not working.
Since day one, the British Columbia Association of Chiefs of Police has expressed significant concern with the issue of public consumption of illicit drugs. This concern is based on a fundamental belief in the importance of finding a balance between ensuring that people who use drugs are not unnecessarily criminalized, while all members in communities across this province feel safe.
Now, BC wants to amend the decriminalization project to allow police to arrest addicts using hard drugs in public.
But that compassion, that concern for people who are struggling, does not mean that anything goes. We today have made a formal request to Health Canada to amend the exemption to the Controlled Drugs and Substances Act, which will give the police the tools they need to enforce the law anytime someone is using drugs in an inappropriate location and compromising public safety. In short, this amendment will make public drug use illegal in British Columbia.
We have always said that for decriminalization to succeed, it has to be part of a broader strategy to address the tragic consequences of the drug crisis that has killed far too many British Columbians. Treatment, education, prevention, and enforcement against predatory organized crime groups are equally important.
Tina House, APTN National News, Vancouver.
Peguis First Nation has declared a state of emergency in hopes of addressing a health crisis they say is driven by repeated spring flooding. The news comes a week after the community launched a $1 billion lawsuit against the province of Manitoba and the federal government for flood damages. APTN's Sierra Bettens has more.
Over the past 2 decades, repeated floods have devastated Peguis First Nation. This week, after launching a $1 billion lawsuit and declaring a state of emergency, the community hopes those in power will finally take action.
On the land that Chief Peguis once protected, we are compelled to declare a state of emergency in Peguis First Nation. This declaration is driven by a severe crisis that affects not just our lands and homes, but the very spirit and mental well-being of our people.
Located 200 kilometers north of Winnipeg, Peguis is the largest First Nation in Manitoba, with a population of approximately 10,000 members. The $1 billion lawsuit seeks compensation from the federal and provincial governments for flood damages, repairs, and cleanup costs. The community was first displaced from the St. Peter's Reserve near Selkirk, Manitoba, in 1907, following an illegal land transfer. Today, around 549 members are still displaced from the flood of 2022. Chief Stan Bird says there are over 180 condemned houses in Peguis. However, some families, lacking options, live in them.
The scars left by these waters are not visible only on buildings alone, but are evident in the eyes and hearts of our people.
A press release from Peguis cites increased reports of self-harm, domestic violence, and substance abuse in the last year. Patricia Caribou, lead of the Peguis Wellness Team, wants more autonomy from Indigenous Services Canada to address these issues.
The answer is to allow Peguis to do what they see fit. How to help the families, how to help the individuals, how to help everybody. Peguis has their own answer for all mental health, physical health, the whole holistic healing of the community.
Mike Sutherland is the band's director of special projects. He says the flooding is driven by farming in surrounding areas.
Riparian areas, swamps, and wetlands have been eliminated in the rural municipality south of us. So, and those things hold water, right, to prevent water from flowing, and they're there for a reason. But yet, because of agriculture, they're all gone.
While the community is part of a federal and provincial working group, Sutherland says they're still forced to prioritize crisis intervention over long-term prevention.
How many times do we have to flood before they do anything? Like how many people have to die that are living out there, overdose or suicide, or elders dying while they're away from home because they're lonely. I mean, this has been our homeland for over 100 years.
After decades of fighting for action, Sutherland says Peguis no longer wants studies. They want solutions. Sierra Bettens, APTN National News, Peguis First Nation.
Time for one more quick break, but stick around. There's more to come. Welcome back. The Community Arts Mentorship Program in Saskatchewan is all about bringing art to underserved areas in the province to prove that art is more than just a hobby. Reporter Rachel May sat down with the founders of Camp Sask Arts.
The Community Arts Mentorship Program, or Camp Sask Arts, was created after a mental health crisis near the community of Loon Lake in 2019 took the lives of 3 young people. Co-founder Holly Ray-Uzichipi is a visual artist from Standing Buffalo, Dakota Nation. She says the program is meant to cultivate a communal sense of well-being through the arts.
I'm so passionate about sharing culture and art, and sometimes just being Indigenous, it's hard to feel that you can have things that are awesome.
Camp Sask Arts offers people of all ages mentorships in how to work in both visual and musical art forms, as well as how to teach what they've learned and remove the tokenization of Indigenous art.
I always hear that term, we're more than beads and bannock. There's a lot, and helping people recognize our communities also have history in that, so let's find it and let's help our people connect to that history.
Co-founder Eliza Doyle is a musical artist from Loon Lake and says it's important these programs aren't one and done.
And really all that does is reinforce that good things don't stay, or here's something that's coming and then it's going to not be here again.
Recently, Camp Sask Arts was supported by the Downey Wenjack Blanket Fund to the tune of $175,000 every year for 4 years to continue their programming.
So that's our commitment too, is what we base our programming on, is we will never leave a community until local capacity has been achieved.
Rachel May, APTN National News, Saskatoon.
Looks like a pretty great program. That's all the time we have for your APTN National News for this weekend. For news anytime, though, you can visit our website, aptnnews.ca. And don't forget, starting Monday, we will also be adding an APTN National Newscast to the middle of your day, 5 days a week at 1 p.m. Eastern. Looking forward to it. I'm Dennis Ward. Marcy McGuich, thanks for being with us. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.